Emily sways to the rhythm, lost in the music. Her laughter is infectious as she spins under the club's lights, unaware of the powerful gaze fixated on her from above. From the VIP balcony, Alexander takes a slow sip of his whiskey, watching her with quiet intensity. There's something about her and energy, a confidence that stands out from the crowd. His moment of observation is interrupted when Marco leans in again. Marco, lowering his voice. Boss, it's not the usual trouble. You might want to take a look. Alexander exhales sharply, annoyed. He casts one last glance at Emily before turning toward the exit. A group of men stand near the entrance, arguing with the bouncer. One of them, a tall man with slick back hair, notices Alexander stepping out and immediately straightens up. Slick back man. Reeves. Been a while. Alexander tilts his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Alexander. Not long enough. Marco steps in, but Alexander raises a hand, signaling him to hold off. Slick back man. I just came to talk. Business. Alexander smirks, glancing at the men behind him. Alexander. You bring back up for a conversation? The man chuckles, but there's no humor in it. Slick back man. Just being cautious. Word is, you've been stepping into new territory. That makes some people nervous. Alexander steps closer, his voice calm but edged with authority. Alexander. If they're nervous, they should talk to me directly, instead of sending messengers to my doorstep. The man steadies him for a beat, then smirks. Slick back man. I'll let them know. Enjoy your night, Reeves. The group slowly backs off, disappearing into the shadows. Marco watches them go, his jaw tight. Marco. This isn't over. Alexander. It never is. He turns back toward the club, his mind already shifting to business, to the unknown threat that just knocked on his door. And to the woman dancing inside, still unaware she has caught the attention of a man who doesn't let things go once they're in his sights. Alexander steps back into the club, the heavy bass of the music vibrating through the floor. He adjusts the cuff of his tailored suit, his expression unreadable as he scans the dance floor once more. Emily is still there, laughing as she twirls in rhythm with the music, her energy infectious. But now, Alexander notices something else. She isn't just any carefree clubgoer. She moves like she owns the space around her, effortlessly drawing people in. Curiosity sharpens in his gaze. Alexander settles into a plush leather booth, his drink in hand. Marco stands nearby, scanning the crowd for potential threats. Alexander. Without looking at Marco. Find out who she is. Marco follows his gaze to Emily. He nods and steps away. Emily finally slows down, breathless. She leans in to speak to her friend, Lana, mid-20s, confident, stylish. Lana. Grinning. You've got an admirer. Emily frowns slightly, following Lana's gaze toward the VIP balcony. She spots Alexander, watching her with quiet intensity. Their eyes meet, and for a brief moment, the rest of the club fades away. There's something dangerous about him, powerful, magnetic. But instead of looking away, Emily tilts her head, a slow, teasing smile playing at her lips. Alexander smirks. VIP Lounge. Alexander's booth. Marco returns, sliding into the seat across from Alexander. Marco. Emily Carter. No connections, no history with us. She's clean. Alexander swirls the amber liquid in his glass. Alexander. Interesting. Emily feels a tap on her shoulder. She turns to see a sharply dressed server. Server. Miss Carter, Mr. Reeves would like to invite you to his table. Lana's eyebrows shoot up. Emily bites her lip, considering. Then, she exhales a small laugh. Emily. Tell Mr. Reeves if he wants to talk, he should ask me himself. The server hesitates, then nods and retreats. Lana turns to Emily, wide-eyed. Lana. Girl, do you even know who that is? Emily just grins, eyes sparkling with mischief. VIP lounge. The server relays the message. Marco chuckles under his breath. Marco. She's got guts. Alexander leans back, intrigued. Then, he stands. Alexander. Let's see if she keeps that attitude up close. As he moves toward the dance floor, all eyes in the club subtly shift. The king of Elixir is making his move. Emily, sensing him before she even turns, smiles to herself. She likes a challenge. And so, it seems, does he. Emily leans on the counter, ordering a drink. The bartender slides it over, and she turns only to find Alexander beside her. Alexander. Enjoying yourself? Emily. I was, until the mysterious stranger appeared. She smirks, sipping her drink. Alexander chuckles, leaning in. Alexander. I own this place. I like to know my guests. Emily, raising an eyebrow. Should I be flattered or concerned? Alexander, charming. A little of both. Their chemistry sizzles, the tension thick between them. Just as the moment deepens, a loud commotion near the entrance grabs their attention. A man stumbles inside, breathing heavily, his shirt stained with something dark. His eyes dart around the room, wild and desperate. A few patrons whisper among themselves as the music lowers slightly. Unknown man, panting, voice shaking. Where is he? Emily stiffens, instinctively stepping closer to Alexander, who watches the scene with an unreadable expression. The bartender suddenly reaches under the counter, possibly for security. The man's gaze finally lands on Alexander. His expression twists into something between relief and fear. Unknown man, pleading. Alexander, you have to help me. They're coming. Alexander remains still, his charming demeanor cooling into something sharper. Alexander, calm, measured. You know the rules, Liam. You bring trouble to my door, you handle it yourself. Emily watches, intrigued but cautious. Liam, frantic. This is different. They won't stop until they find it. Until they find me. Alexander sighs, swirling the drink in his glass before setting it down. He glances at Emily, his earlier flirtation now shadowed by something else. Danger. Alexander, to Emily, voice low. I'd say you walked into the wrong bar tonight, but maybe this was fate. Before she can respond, the doors burst open. 3 figures step inside. Their suits are crisp, their movements calculated. And their eyes cold and unforgiving lock onto Liam. Lead figure, smooth, yet deadly. There you are. A tense silence falls over the bar. Emily tightens her grip around her glass, heart pounding. Whatever she's just stepped into, it's much bigger than a simple night out. And Alexander? He's right in the middle of it. Alexander remains unfazed, watching the scene with the cool detachment of a man who's seen this play out before. Lead figure, calm, yet menacing. Liam, you've caused us quite the inconvenience. Liam takes a shaky step backward, his hand gripping the edge of the counter as if it's the only thing keeping him upright. Liam, desperate, to Alexander. You know what they'll do to me. I just need. Alexander, cutting him off, voice steady. You broke the rules. You brought your mess to my doorstep. Liam's face falls. Emily watches, fascinated and wary. There's something about Alexander's tone, a quiet authority that demands respect. Whoever he is, he's more than just a charming bar owner. Lead figure, to Alexander, with a polite smile. We appreciate your neutrality in these matters. So I assume you won't interfere. Alexander doesn't answer right away. Instead, he takes a slow sip of his drink, eyes locked onto the man in front of him. Emily notices his hand subtly drifting toward the inside of his jacket. A weapon? A phone? She can't be sure. Alexander, finally, smoothly. Neutrality depends on context. And right now, I don't like the context. Liam exhales in relief. The three suited men, however, exchange glances. Lead figure, sighing, disappointed. That's unfortunate. The next second, everything erupts into chaos. One of the men reaches inside his jacket. Emily doesn't have time to see what he's pulling out before Alexander moves fast. With practiced precision, he grabs Liam by the shoulder and yanks him down as a suppressed shot fires, the bullet shattering a bottle on the shelf behind them. Glass rains down, and the bartender ducks, cursing under his breath. Alexander is already moving. In one fluid motion, he pulls a sleek black pistol from inside his jacket and fires two quick, controlled shots. One of the suited men staggers backward, clutching his shoulder. Emily stumbles back, her pulse hammering in her throat. The bar erupts into chaos. Patrons scream, scrambling for cover. The bartender yells something, but it's lost in the noise. Alexander doesn't hesitate. He grips Emily's wrist, his voice sharp against her ear. Alexander. Time to go, sweetheart. Before she can protest, he's pulling her through the side exit, Liam right behind them. They burst into the alley, the cold night air hitting Emily like a slap. Alexander doesn't slow, leading them through a maze of backstreets, his movements precise like he's done this 100 times before. Emily, breathless, struggling to keep up. What the hell was that? Alexander, without looking back. Complications. Emily, angry, incredulous. You call gunmen in suits complications? Liam, still gasping, looks at Alexander. Liam. You didn't have to help me. Alexander finally stops at a dead-end alley. He turns to Liam, his expression unreadable. Alexander, grimly. You have something they want, don't you? Liam hesitates. Emily crosses her arms, trying to steady herself. She should leave. She should walk away. But something tells her she's already in too deep. Emily, slowly, realizing. And now, so do we. A shadow moves at the alley's entrance. They're not alone. Alexander exhales, rolling his shoulders like a man preparing for battle. Alexander, to Emily, smirking despite the danger. Guess this means you're sticking around. Emily swallows hard. She has a feeling her life just got a lot more complicated. And strangely, she doesn't mind. Emily barely has time to process what's happening before Alexander shifts in front of her, his stance sharp, protective. From the shadows, another figure emerges. This one isn't dressed like the suited gunman. He's leaner, dressed in dark clothes that let him blend seamlessly into the night. His movements are deliberate, assessing. Unknown man, calm, almost amused. Didn't expect you to get involved, Alexander. Alexander exhales slowly, like he already regrets the decision. Alexander, dryly. And yet, here we are. Liam stiffens beside them. Liam, whispering to Emily, panicked. That's Kane. If he's here, we're already dead. Emily doesn't recognize the name, but the way Liam says it sends a chill down her spine. Kane tilts his head, his gaze flicking to Emily with mild curiosity. Kane, to Alexander. New friend? Alexander, easily. Just someone who happened to be in the wrong bar at the wrong time. Kane hums, unconvinced. Kane, mocking. You always did have a habit of collecting strays. Alexander's expression darkens, but he doesn't take the bait. Instead, he subtly shifts his weight, angling himself between Kane and Emily. Kane, sighing, to Liam. You know how this works. Hand it over, and maybe they'll let you live. Emily glances at Liam. He's shaking, his fingers twitching at his sides. Emily, low, to Liam. What do you have? Liam doesn't answer. His throat bobs as he swallows hard. Alexander, impatient. Liam. Liam clenches his jaw before slowly reaching into his jacket. For a second, Emily braces for another gunfight, but instead, he pulls out a small, battered flash drive. Kane raises an eyebrow, unimpressed. Kane. A flash drive? That's what this is about. Liam grips it tightly, his knuckles white. Liam, voice shaking. You don't get it. This is leverage. Proof. If this gets out. Kane moves fast. Too fast. Before anyone can react, he surges forward, grabbing Liam by the throat and slamming him against the brick wall. Liam gasps, his feet barely touching the ground. Emily startles, but Alexander doesn't hesitate. In a blur of movement, he steps in, pressing the barrel of his gun to Kane's temple. Alexander, calm, dangerous. Let him go. For a moment, the alley is silent. Kane smirks. Kane, amused, unfazed by the gun to his head. Still playing the hero? Alexander, cold. I'm not playing anything. Kane studies him, then, slowly, releases Liam, who crumples to the ground, coughing. Kane, sighing, disappointed. You should have stayed out of this, Alexander. Kane takes a step back, raising his hands in mock surrender. Kane, grinning. But fine. Keep him. Keep the drive. Let's see how long you last. Emily shivers at the underlying threat in his voice. Kane backs away, disappearing into the night like a shadow. A beat of silence. Then, Emily, exhaling, hands on her hips. Okay. What the hell just happened? Alexander runs a hand down his face, muttering something under his breath before turning to Liam. Alexander, grimly. Start talking. Now. Liam wipes his mouth, still shaken. He holds up the flash drive, his fingers trembling. Liam. This has everything. Blackmail, dirty deals, names of people they've paid off. He looks up at Alexander, desperate. Liam, pleading. This could take them down. Alexander exhales, his jaw tight. He knows what that means. Emily watches him carefully. Emily, softly. You know who they are, don't you? Alexander meets her gaze, and for the first time, she sees something else in his eyes, something heavy. Alexander, quietly. Yeah. I do. A cold wind sweeps through the alley. Emily realizes, with startling clarity, that she's standing at a crossroads. She could walk away now. Pretend none of this ever happened. Or she could stay. The problem is, she's already made her choice. Emily, resolute, to Alexander. So, what's our next move? Alexander studies her for a long moment. Then, finally he smirks. Alexander. I knew I liked you. He tucks his gun away and nods toward the street. Alexander. Let's go. We've got work to do. Jason struggles against security's grip, his voice carrying across the room. Jason. This isn't over, Emily. With one final glare at Alexander, Jason is dragged out the door. The room is left buzzing with murmurs, eyes flickering between Emily and Alexander. Alexander turns back to her, his expression unreadable. Alexander. Are you all right? Emily exhales, still shaken. Emily. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see him again. She looks toward the exit as if half expecting Jason to storm back in. Alexander. I take it he's not just an ex. Emily forces a smile, but there's a flicker of pain behind it. Emily. Let's just say Jason doesn't handle rejection well. Alexander studies her for a moment, then offers his arm. Alexander. Come on. A drink, a distraction, whatever you need. Emily hesitates, but then slips her hand into his arm. Emily. I think I could use both. As they move toward the bar, Nether notices a pair of eyes watching from the shadows. Jason, still lurking outside, his jaw clenched. Jason, muttering to himself. This isn't over, Emily. Not by a long shot. Alexander leads Emily to the sleek, dimly lit bar at the far end of the venue. A bartender immediately acknowledges him, nodding in silent recognition. Alexander, to the bartender. Something strong for the lady. Emily smirks at his confidence. Emily. Bold of you to assume. Alexander. You look like you could use it. She sighs, conceding as the bartender places a glass in front of her. She takes a sip, the burn of whiskey grounding her. Emily. I should thank you for earlier. Alexander. No need. Some men don't understand boundaries. Emily studies him, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Emily. And you do? Alexander holds her gaze, a slow smirk forming. Alexander. I prefer to think of myself as persuasive, not forceful. Emily lets out a soft laugh, but there's an underlying wariness. Before she can respond, her phone vibrates on the bar. She glances at the screen. Unknown number. Her stomach knots. She doesn't have to answer to know who it is. Jason, text message. You think I'll just let this go? We're not done. Emily's fingers tighten around the phone. Alexander, noticing the shift in her expression, tilts his head. Alexander. Emily. She swallows, locking her phone screen. Emily. It's nothing. Alexander. It's him, isn't it? Her silence is answer enough. Alexander lowers voice. You should tell me if he's a real problem. Before she can reply, a movement near the entrance catches her eye. A figure lingers just beyond the doorway, obscured by shadows. Jason. Emily stiffens. Alexander follows her gaze, his jaw tightening. Alexander. Stay here. Emily grabs his wrist before he can step away. Emily. Please don't make a scene. That's what he wants. Alexander glances down at her hand on his wrist, then back at Jason. Slowly, he relaxes. Alexander. Fine. But if he sets one foot inside. Emily. I'll handle it. But they both know this isn't over. Jason watches from outside, his expression darkening. He pulls out his phone, dialing a number. Jason, low voice. I need a favor. As the night continues inside, Emily is unaware that Jason isn't planning to leave quietly. Emily. Smirks. That's dramatic. Alexander. Trails a finger along the rim of his glass. You have no idea. Emily. Challenging. Then tell me. Alexander hesitates, then puts his phone face down on the table. Alexander. Not tonight. Emily narrows her eyes but lets it slide. Emily. Fine. But if we're breaking our own rules, we might as well do it properly. She raises her glass in a silent toast. Alexander watches her for a beat, then clinks his glass against hers. Alexander. To bad ideas. Emily. And the people who make them worth it. They drink, the city lights reflecting in their glasses. But as Alexander sets his drink down, his gaze flickers toward his phone, something lurking beneath his charm. A storm is coming. And Emily is about to get caught in the middle of it. As Emily swirls the last of her drink in her glass, she watches Alexander carefully. His easy charm is still there, but something has shifted. The phone whoever had texted lingers in his mind. Emily. Lowering her voice. You know, for someone who owns a club, you don't seem to be having much fun tonight. Alexander exhales, a half smile playing at his lips. Alexander. Let's just say, business isn't always about fun. Before Emily can press further, a shadow falls over their table. A man in a dark suit, sharp-eyed and unreadable, stops beside Alexander. Man. Quietly. Mr. Carter, we have a problem. Emily glances between them, sensing the shift in the air. Alexander's jaw tightens before he smooths it over with that polished exterior. Alexander. To the man. Handle it. I'm busy. The man hesitates. Man. It's the kind of problem that won't wait. Alexander finally looks at Emily, an apology in his eyes. Alexander. I'll be right back. He stands, buttoning his jacket as he walks away, leaving Emily with 1,000 questions. Her fingers tap against her glass, debating. She could let it go, pretend this was just another flirtation she'd forget by morning. Or she could follow him. With one last glance at the skyline, Emily makes her choice. She slips from her seat and moves through the club, keeping a safe distance behind Alexander as he heads toward a back hallway marked private. Something tells her she's about to learn exactly what kind of man Alexander Carter really is. Alexander swirls the amber liquid in his glass, eyes still locked on Emily's number. Marco watches him, arms crossed. Marco scoffs, you barely know her. Alexander. Maybe. But I know how I feel. Marco shakes his head, pacing the room. Marco. You're not thinking straight. The last time you got involved like this. Alexander. I know how that ended. A beat. Marco studies him, searching for a crack in his resolve. Marco. Then why repeat history? Alexander finally looks at him, his expression unreadable. Alexander. Because this time, I won't run. Silence lingers between them. Alexander takes a slow sip of his drink, then, without hesitation, presses the call button on his phone. Marco. Grumbling, you're impossible. The line rings. Alexander holds his breath. Emily, OS. Softly, surprised, Alexander. His grip tightens around the glass. Alexander. Hey. We need to talk. Marco watches as Alexander holds the phone to his ear. His expression is unreadable, but there's a flicker of something hope, maybe. Emily, OS. Hesitant, I wasn't expecting your call. Alexander. I wasn't sure I'd make it. A small chuckle from Emily, light but cautious. Emily, OS. And yet, here we are. Marco shakes his head, mouthing, bad idea, but Alexander ignores him. He turns away, focusing only on Emily's voice. Alexander. Can we meet? A pause. Alexander can hear faint movement on the other end, like she's pacing. Emily, OS. Is that a good idea? Alexander. Probably not. Another beat of silence. Then. Emily, OS. Same place as last time? Alexander exhales, tension leaving his shoulders. Alexander. I'll be there. He hangs up. Marco groans, rubbing his temples. Marco. Tell me you're not actually going. Alexander downs the rest of his drink, grabbing his coat. Alexander. I have to. Marco watches him go, muttering under his breath. Marco. Yeah. That's what you said last time. Alexander steps out of his apartment, the cold air hitting him instantly. He tightens his coat, his heartbeat steady but heavy. Ahead, neon lights flicker, the city alive with movement. He walks with purpose, hands deep in his pockets. He's not sure if this is a mistake. But he knows he can't turn back now. Alexander slides into the seat across from her. For a moment, neither speaks. The hum of conversations, clinking cups, and distant jazz fill the space between them. Emily. Softly, I didn't think you'd actually come. Alexander. Neither did I. A faint smile plays on her lips, but it fades just as quickly. She studies him, as if searching for an answer to an unspoken question. Emily. So, what now? Alexander. That depends. Are you still running? Emily exhales, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. Emily. I don't know. Maybe. Are you? Alexander. Not this time. A charged silence. Emily looks away, out the window, where headlights blur into the rain-slick streets. Emily. Things are complicated, Alexander. Alexander. They always are. But that doesn't mean we walk away. She tenses, her fingers tightening around the cup. Emily. You think it's that easy? Alexander. No. But I think it's worth it. Their eyes meet, and for a moment, something shifts. The weight of the past, the uncertainty of the future, it all lingers in the air between them. Then, the bell above the door jingles. A man in a dark coat enters, his eyes scanning the cafe. He spots Emily and Alexander, his expression unreadable. Emily stiffens. Alexander. Noticing, who is that? Emily swallows hard. Emily. We should go. Now. Alexander glances at the man again. Something feels off. Alexander. Emily, who is he? Emily grabs her coat, urgency flashing in her eyes. Emily. Not here. I'll explain later. She stands, but the man moves toward them. Alexander places a protective hand on her wrist. Alexander. Too late. The man stops at their table, looking down at Emily. Man. You shouldn't be here. Tension crackles in the air. Alexander. And who the hell are you? Emily exhales, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily. Alexander, please, don't do this. The man's expression remains unreadable, but his presence alone speaks volumes. Something bigger is at play. And Alexander just walked straight into it.